morning. It's Monday, December 29th, 2014. This is your morning edition on I-24 News. Another passenger plane departing from Indonesia goes missing without a trace. 13 years after first invading Afghanistan, NATO officially concludes its mission. And later on the show, Jewish comedians treat us to a glimpse into what they call their Yid life crisis. Good morning, I'm Yael Avi. We begin with the continuing search for AirAsia flight QZ8501, which mysteriously disappeared en route from Indonesia to Singapore. According to a briefing by Indonesia's Air Transportation Department, the plane lost contact with Indonesian air traffic controllers after the pilot asked permission to change course to avoid bad weather during the journey. Search efforts for the Airbus 320-200 that was carrying 162 passengers and crew continued this morning after braking for several hours overnight. Singapore, Malaysia, and Australia offered to help in the search and were sending search ships and aircrafts to the area in the Java Sea where it was last heard from. Now, Malaysian Army forces were also deployed to carry out ground searches in nearby mountainous areas. The plane's disappearance comes at the end of a disastrous year for Malaysian aviation industry. Malaysia Airline flight MH370 carrying 239 people vanished without a trace in March of this year after inexplicably diverting from its Kuala Lumpur-Beijing course. And in July, another Malaysia Airlines plane went down in eastern Ukraine, killing all 298 aboard. It was believed to have been hit by a surface-to-air missile. Now, to discuss the most recent incident, we're joined in studio by Eran Ramot, a former Israeli fighter pilot who's now the head of the Aviation Research Program at the Fisher Institute. Good morning to you, Mr. Ramot. Thank you for being with us. And, of course, by our one and only senior foreign affairs editor for Channel 1 in Israel, Oren Nahari.
Hello,
good morning to you. Before we break this latest mystery down, let's take a look at the latest report from our I-24 News desk.
9 months after the disappearance of Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 shook the world, it is facing another mysterious aviation incident, this time in neighboring Indonesia. An AirAsia plane heading for Singapore went missing Sunday, along with its 162 passengers. Most of the passengers are adults, but 16 children and 1 infant were on board. Officials in Jakarta said the search efforts have top priority.
The Indonesian government has ordered the National Search and Rescue Agency, Air Force, Navy and Army, as well as local governments, to mobilize every effort and piece of equipment in search of this plane at sea and on land.
Flight 8501 took off Saturday from Surabaya, the second biggest city in Indonesia, and was halfway to its destination before it dropped off the radar screen. The last communication between the pilot and air traffic control was Saturday, 23:24 GMT, when the pilot asked permission to change route due to bad weather.
It is a terrible feeling of loss right now, but it is premature. I think the Indonesian authorities are doing their best now for the search and rescue.
2014 was not a good year for aviation companies, especially those from Southeast Asia. In March, a Malaysia Airlines aircraft was lost with all 239 passengers and crew, and in July a plane from the same airline was shot down in Donetsk Oblast in eastern Ukraine, killing all 283 passengers and 15 crew on board. The chief executive of AirAsia refused to speculate on what happened to the missing plane, and as for now, relatives of the passengers are still waiting for a sign of life.
Now, Mr. Ramot with us in studio, head of the Aviation Research Program at the Fisher Institute. As we just said, probably the biggest understatement of the year is that 2014 was not a good year for aviation. But looking at this incident now of this Asian airliner, everybody's raising an eyebrow saying this is eerily similar to what happened to MH370 earlier in March. Is this a similar case? And
there's no similarity whatsoever.
Okay, explain
The
that.
only connection I can put in connecting the two mishaps is some kind of voodoo spell. Otherwise, there's nothing to connect the two. One is, it looks like it has been intentionally diverting and disappearing, and we don't know anything.
We're talking about MH flight 370, that it
yeah.
just basically almost intentionally flew off course.
There is some systematic indication that something was going there intentionally.
Right.
I don't know what. Nobody knows it. On the other hand, the mishap of yesterday, first of all, nothing is known yet.
Right.
I was hoping last night before I went to sleep that today, this morning, they will be able to find some debris. The good thing is, in connecting the other mishap, is that the area is smaller, and hopefully we'll find what really happened.
Several minutes before we came into the studio, there was a report saying that Indonesian or researchers believe the plane is at the bottom of the sea, which obviously we don't really know that at this stage. But when you say that the search area, it's smaller, is there also a difference in terms of, one of the problems I think with MH370 was that the bed of the sea was so deep that nobody could really actually get to that point. But in a search like this, if this were, let me ask you this in a different way. If this were a search that would go well, quote unquote, and nothing in the story is going well at this point, but if it were a search that goes well, how long does it take from a plane disappearance to finding debris or finding any type of locator for the plane?
This plane is known to disappear in a certain area. It makes it much easier. I don't know too much about searching, but it's a less unknown area, like it was in the mishap of last March. So it's limited area to look and to search in. That's why I say I'm more optimistic that sometime in the near future we will find debris, we will find what happened, even if it lies down in the ocean. It is a so-called known area.
Known area, but by known area in Ornahar, I'm wondering with you, charted areas, right? Yes.
And not only that, of course, when the mishap of 370, when it disappeared in the bottom of the ocean in a huge area, this is the straits between Surabaya and Singapore are very well traveled, and there are commerce ships and whatever, and the fishermen, etc. Perhaps somebody saw in his own eyes where the plane disappeared and can come up with the have seen it
to the point where see it fall, see it
falls. Yeah, basically. Well, it's not in the sky.
Right. Clearly it's not in the sky. Yes.
And presumably it's not on land. It didn't crash on land, because I think that by this time we would have known about it, but perhaps not. If it's fell to the sea, and if there are witnesses who saw it, because again it's not the roaring 30s and in the bottom of the ocean, that's a different thing. And yes, as Eran said, and rightly so, this is a limited area, very well traveled, very well known, and hopefully
that'll come about. And speaking of finding this plane, when it comes to the black box, I think we're all wondering out loud, people who don't understand anything in aviation, isn't it basically a transmitter that at this stage should be transmitting pings back to any type of search that is looking for it?
According to the books, yes.
According to the books, exactly.
There is a transmitter that should transmit for some time, for a month or so, its location. Sometime, somewhere, we will find it. The area that the airplane may have been drifted to, it is either the ocean or some mountainous and wooded, heavily wooded area of Java Island or Indonesia's islands. So we don't know until we find out, because strangely enough, the airplane just disappeared from the scopes, the radar scopes. One more thing that to relate to is the very bad weather that existed in this area at the time of flight. It's a tropical zone, very high and very aggressive clouds are there. We know how to avoid them. This pilot is said to ask for avoidance. He was denied from his request. He requested to climb to a higher altitude, which is a little bit too high. The request is too high for what the airplane can do at this stage of flight, with weight and stuff. But he wanted to avoid the airplane by climbing higher.
And did not get a permission to do so.
Did not get a permission. I don't know what happened there, because the weather may be...
A lightning bolt could have done this kind of
thing,
that the plane disappearing.
A lightning bolt or a bomb or a sabotage or...
Of course.
Or
that's the other thing
technical problem.
No, that's the other thing I'm wondering, because when we began this discussion, we said that people should not be comparing MH370 to this recent Asian flight disappearing. But you remember, Oren, that with MH370, at the beginning, everybody was talking possible terror.
Yes.
Everybody was looking at possible terror. What are the And still true. I know, horrifically so. I mean, almost a year on. But in this case, I mean, are there any theories, or this just looks like?
We really do not know yet. We can theorize from here to eternity, but still, okay. So I do remember when the plane that took off from Israel and crashed in the Black Sea, and what do you say? Probably you say either there was a human error or a technical fault. Nobody could have thought at the time that Ukraine would do some sort of drill and some Ukrainian soldier fired a rocket, and this is what happened, and brought the plane down. So we do not know yet. It can be any of several theories, and the bad news is that these days we think about terror maybe first and foremost. When we say it was a bad year, because not only the 3 planes crashed, they crashed each one of them in circumstances which we cannot fully explain, or perhaps we'll never understand, and it is something that it's outside our knowledge, something that is outside our experience, that you fly over a war zone in the middle of Europe and somebody would fire a rocket, a missile, and will bring a plane down that is not connected whatsoever to the war going on there. Another one that the plane disappearing, and we do not know yet why and how it happened,
most likely,
and was diverted
is it safe to say
from
that
its
with
course.
MH370 will I mean, at this stage it looks like we'll never know with the MH370. Okay, and now this one.
And now this one that again we do not know. Well, it's 24 hours. Perhaps we will know, but at the moment we do not know, and there are no signs that we can begin to understand. No Mayday call, no transmission to the control tower, nothing. The plane is there and then it disappears.
There are only hints. You know, that what we know is that the Airbus 320 is a very good airplane, very modern. We know that the pilot is very experienced. Both pilots are experienced. We know that they flew a normal scheduled flight, and we know that they asked for a diversion, due weather. Other than that, we can just start guessing. The weather may be a reason. Maybe. It's a sheer guess so far.
No, I mean, I'm assuming that that's the case. When it comes to the weather, the frightening thing about it, I think, to anybody watching, listening, or hearing, is that we're always told that turbulence cannot bring down a plane. But in this case, obviously, turbulence, may have brought down a plane.
We are told, and I told it a couple of times in the recent days, that turbulence is, in most cases, is avoidable. It's known. It is well known ahead of time, and we avoid it. If it is too aggressive, we just don't fly. So the weather is an issue, an issue that is treatable. Sometimes there are pilots that go against all logical decision.
And believe that they can fly the plane over.
There was one in Thailand, in Phuket, I think, that just landed where it shouldn't go on with the landing procedure, and crashed due rain, heavy rain that you should avoid. So, and I'm not saying anything, I'm not hinting anything about this case.
Understood.
But I'm saying the weather can result in very, very
bad consequences.
But we know how to avoid it in most cases.
And when it comes to, I mean, I don't need to ask, what this does to the flying industry, but Oren, as you mentioned, and I want to ask you, in terms of, the safety of flying, I mean, it's not, people are, constantly now saying it's probably not safe, it's not this, it's not that. It's not something that we didn't know. As you said, weather can be avoided, right? And it depends mostly on what? On the pilot?
On the pilot and the meteorological forecast.
But when a pilot, in the instance of this flight, of AirAsia flight QZ8501, transmits a request to fly over, to go really high above clouds because he sees there's a danger, and he doesn't get an approval to do so. Why isn't there no approval to do so? Because it's dangerous to do so mid-flight?
Because of coordination of traffic in the area. I don't know what really the reason was.
Right.
But, the very first thing that comes to my mind is if you can't avoid it, just deny it. Go back or something.
And as we said,
I'm not hinting anything about what really happened in this fight.
No, clearly, no, we were all just theorizing. Clearly, we do not know, but I want to thank you very much, Eran Ramot, for coming, for being here this morning. Hopefully, we'll find out something in the next 24 hours, and this does not become a mysterious. Sooner or later. That's what they said about MH370.
No, it's a different case.
It's a different case. It's a completely different case. We're hoping so. Thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
And we move on. U.S. troops and their NATO allies in Afghanistan have formally ended what became America's longest war, furling their flag 13 years after a 2001 invasion to topple the country's Taliban regime in the wake of the September 11 terrorist attacks. Yes, they are out of Afghanistan. Now, the event was marked by a very low-key ceremony in Kabul, reflecting grave concerns that while the mission is formally over, the battle is far from run. Details of the ceremony were withheld until the last moment for security reasons, fearing Taliban strikes. Sunday's ceremony also completed the gradual handover of security responsibility in the country to the Afghan military. But recent bloodshed has undermined claims that the insurgency is weakening and has highlighted fears that the international intervention has failed as Afghanistan faces spiraling violence. According to the UN, civilian casualties hit a record high in 2014, jumping by 19%, with 3,188 civilians killed in Afghanistan by the end of November. Now, the conflict has claimed the lives of more than 2,000 U.S. military personnel, tens of thousands of Afghan citizens, and an estimated 20,000 to 3,500 Taliban fighters. To discuss this topic, we are joined in studio, still by Israel's Broadcasting Association Channel 1 Foreign Affairs editor, Oren Nahari. First, let's watch the following report and break it down from there.
U.S.-led forces in Afghanistan formally ended their combat mission on Sunday, 13 years since the first airstrikes were launched against Osama bin Laden's Al-Qaeda.
Today, NATO completes its combat mission, a 13-year endeavor filled with significant achievements.
But hopes for a so-called end to military involvement in Afghanistan are largely unfounded. Some 13,000 foreign troops will remain under a new mission to focus on training Afghan troops. Just last week in his Christmas address, U.S. President Barack Obama noted the end of the mission in Afghanistan as American troops deployed in the country celebrated Christmas overseas.
Next week, we will be ending our combat mission in Afghanistan. Obviously, because of the extraordinary service of the men and women in American armed forces, Afghanistan has a chance to rebuild its own country.
But as NATO lowers its flags on the Afghanistan mission, insurgency is rising in the country. 2014 saw more than 3,000 civilians killed in Afghanistan by the end of November, and around 5,000 of Afghanistan's security forces were killed in confrontations with Taliban fighters in 2014 alone. Nonetheless, the tone at the NATO ceremony held in Kabul was one of confidence.
Our new Resolute Support mission reflects NATO's continued investment in Afghanistan's future. Our commitment to Afghanistan endures.
But it seems that for Afghanistan's people, foreign troops in the country may be decreasing in number, but the internal war is only changing for the worse.
We are also joined on the phone now from Afghanistan by Ayatollah Jawad, director of the Afghan Human Rights and Research Advocacy Organization. Ayatollah, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Wanting to check with you now, as you know, we have just entered the whole NATO leaving big ceremony. Major concern, though, in Afghanistan this morning and moving on, that the Taliban actually has not really disappeared, but it's still quite strong in the country, isn't it?
I want to correct that all NATO forces will not leave Afghanistan. At least 10,000 troops from United States and from some other countries will stay in Afghanistan to support Afghanistan national armies. So what is more important to understand this point, that the insecurity in Afghanistan right now, especially in 2014, is not only connected to the international troops withdrawal, but it is also connected to the political situation in Afghanistan and the economical situation criticized that we already have due to political issues and election and the problem of after election that we have right now, that Afghanistan government is not able to introduce the cabinet to the parliament of Afghanistan.
Isn't there a danger,
but of
though?
Course, the international.
Go ahead.
Of course, the international troops withdrawal will have its effect in future of Afghanistan, and if the international community do not continue their support to Afghanistan government, of course there will be some problems maintaining the security for the future in Afghanistan. And by the time we don't have security and the security is not maintained, there will be serious problems supporting the human rights and guaranteeing the human rights of Afghans in all over the country.
And all over the country, indeed. Now, but is there a danger, now, that if there is a vacuum when it comes to, being able to create a parliament in Afghanistan by the new government, that people, or that the Taliban actually is going to use that vacuum to sift back into the administration, to sift back into the position of power and take over again?
Yes. If Afghanistan government is not able to get back to the normal life, and they are not able to introduce their cabinet, and they are not able to take the control of the country back. Of course, right now we have the signs that the Taliban took the power in some parts, and their presence is now seriously visible in most parts of the country, even in the northern Afghanistan, that there was it was a secure place, but now it is simply visible, and the security situation is deteriorated due to their presence, and they are challenging the Afghanistan government, and of course they are affecting the normal life of the community.
Of the communities, exactly. Ayatollah, I would like you to stay with us, as I have Mr. Or Nahari with me in studio. Do stay with us, though. Or Nahari, I think between the two of us, we have seen Afghanistan. We have seen this story interlaced through the history, I think, of our reportage over the course of the last decade plus. I'm reading what U.S. Commander, what the U.S. Commander yesterday said, leaving him at the ceremony. General John Campbell said that, Afghan people, to the Afghan people, the road before us remains challenging, but we will triumph. That is about what NATO forces and the Americans have done there thus far. What was achieved?
Well, you're right. You're of course right. This is the longest war in American history, and we tend to focus too much on the West losses, like in the Vietnam War, which is a good analogy, that the Americans lost 53,000 people, and the Vietnamese 2 million. But leave it aside. If we say in the famous words of Clausewitz that war is the policy, diplomacy in other means, it should have brought the Taliban down. It should have dismantled Taliban. It should have dismantled Al-Qaeda. It should have done away with Islamic jihadist terror. 13 years later, and we see Islamic jihadist terror, not only Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda is suddenly look pale compared to Daesh, compared to the IS. And Al-Shabaab and Boko Haram and what have you. And even in Afghanistan itself, Mullah Omar is still there. Ayman al-Zawahiri is still there. The Lashkar-e-Taiba is across the border in Pakistan. They are there yet. So the Taliban and Al-Qaeda are there. And the big question is if after NATO leaves, okay, several thousand remain, but not in combat missions, if we'll see history repeats itself again and again. In Afghanistan, we do remember the Soviets getting out in 1989 through the bridge of freedom and friendship. It was the time peace and friendship, returning to the USSR just before it dismantled itself, and Afghanistan fell to the hands of the Mujahideen several years later. So the danger of chaos is still there. we should not be too hasty to do the comparison and say, okay, this is deterministic, this is it could become a self-fulfilling prophecy, of course. But I think we're not there
yet. We're
yet.
Looking at Iraq nowadays, in Iraq, what happened, a minute after the Americans pulled out, and granted, when we're mentioning Afghanistan, 10,000 troops, but at the end of the day, 10,000 troops is advisor position. It's not a troop force that can do anything. In that respect, if we're looking at Iraq, that looks like, I don't want to say a fait accompli, but that, they pull out, and Iraq is in complete chaos, in civil war. At the end of the day, isn't that something that's also expected in Afghanistan?
It could happen, but it's not exactly the same, because Iraq, what happened there was the poorly planned and poorly done invasion for all the wrong reasons, and it took out the minority who ruled Iraq for years under the iron fist of Saddam Hussein. The Sunni, they dismantled them, kicked them out of the army, left them disgruntled, left them out of the politics, and moved in the Shias, and with them Iran. So and the Kurds in the north. This is a little bit different, although in Afghanistan, of course, we see the minorities, what we used to be called the Northern Front, etc. Right. They are there, and they chose. Well, democracy should have chosen, but it was the Americans' man, Hamid Karzai. He was the wrong man for the mission.
The wrong man for the mission when the Americans chose for him not to be the right man for the mission. I mean, he was also basically deposed by the Americans several months ago.
Yes, that's right. And they hoped that he can be the man that is the man to bring democracy. He's a Pashtun. He's from the majority. Perhaps he can do it. He wasn't the man who could do it, and perhaps the circumstances were so problematic that nobody except Superman could have done anything.
Which is a Ayatollah, if you're still with us, I'm wondering with you, what are the people of Afghanistan saying this morning? Are people happy that international forces are pulling out, in the bulk of them? Are people looking forward to the future, or is there fear that, the thing is going to basically revert back on itself?
What is our people are thinking here, that what happened to Afghanistan was good, but it was not enough. I mean that let's look back that after withdrawal of the international troops from Afghanistan, what they left for Afghanistan. Yeah. Unfortunately, the state building process that was expecting to be very good, it was not very well. Right now we have a very weak government in Afghanistan, which is not able to deal with the Pakistan issue, which is not to deal with the insurgency problem in Afghanistan. And of course, as it is already mentioned, the Afghanistan troops is not able without
to do that alone.
International support.
And sadly, to maintain
the
situation. Sadly, the 10 seconds that we have left, but I want to thank you very much, Ayatollah, for being with us from Afghanistan or Nahal. Always such a pleasure to have you. When we get back, Israeli politics. First, though, let's hear some more of the morning headlines. Good morning. Thank you for staying with us, joining us. I-24 News Morning Edition on this Monday, December
29.
Tony Grant is back. I will try not to be so pathetically overjoyed on the air. But after traveling Alaska, Kuala Lumpur, where else were you?
Mars.
There you
that's
go.
Basically
Papua New Guinea. I always wanted to
to
say Papua New Guinea because it's that place that when you play Risk, that you never know, if to put your things on.
They've got roast chicken there.
Roast chicken there, Papua New Guinea. But you're here
we'll
with
get to poultry later.
In poultry news this morning. For the news you missed, for the headlines you missed while scanning the headlines and news of this, Tony Grant's here.
Well, listen, first of all, great morning to you. The beautiful sea behind you is misleading because, of course, we have a major rescue effort actually underway.
Story.
Very sad story. Again, in progress. Hundreds are trapped as an Italian ferry boat, actually, from yesterday Bay, caught fire lower deck, and one person apparently has died so far. We hope that there won't be more, but there's like an airlift through helicopter use to get people off of this boat.
No, the
basically.
footage out of it looks, staggering when it comes to...
really dramatic stuff there. Of course, it's capturing all the headlines in the Italian newspapers because we're talking about basically an Italian ferry, I believe, that a car ferry between Patras, Greece, and going toward Ancona in northern
And
Italy.
ongoing, as you mentioned, passengers being airlifted from the ship itself.
And apparently stormy seas in that part of the Mediterranean.
Yep.
So again, be following it closely. At the same time, actually, yesterday, a Turkish ship, I think it was a merchant vessel, there was a collision elsewhere in the Mediterranean with also some casualties involved. So, wintertime travel, as we know, has a lot of risks.
And we start the show with yet another disappeared plane over Indonesia. A terrible time for transportation.
Yeah, so listen, following that one, of course, getting back to the region, interesting article from Al Aram, which is one of Egypt's leading newspapers, as you know. An Egyptian scholar actually is calling Islamist leaders, quote unquote, mentally ill. And this comes as Egypt tries to basically, he has a point there, basically saying that that jihadists and radical leaders, pointing that finger more at ISIS, saying they're using religion as a cover for basically crimes and psychological disorders, coming from an Egyptian paper. But this is like a light feature in an Egyptian newspaper, just trying to get to the bottom of kind of the heinousness that's going on out there in the
and it's nice
those circles.
Being honed that way also by a newspaper. Nice is probably not the word to use for it, but that's being honed that way by a newspaper to shed criticism over the modus operandi of ISIS in many ways. So,
trying to look at it from all the different angles. Want to also mention a story in today's Zaman, which I guess we can at this point call a Turkish opposition newspaper, because they are routinely bullied in one way or another by the Turkish powers that be. But they do report that Davutoglu, who is the Prime Minister of Turkey, met with Hamas leader Khaled Mashal in Konya province over the weekend, and vowing support for Palestinians, not specifically vowing support for Hamas, but again, who knows what was said, behind the photo scene there. And again, this is the kind of thing that probably raises the hackles of many in policy-making circles in Israel, United States. A bit of a thumb in the eye, if you might.
No, definitely a thumb in the eye. I think it would be one of the best ways to describe Turkey. Yes.
It's leads to stressful situations. And speaking of stress, Los Angeles Times has a story about White House and gray hairs.
I love these comparisons. They do it with every president. Just because I'm 105, I remember all of them.
Me too.
So
Look at the picture.
Wow.
You have Obama on the left, Obama on the right, when he was a young, sprightly thing just a few years ago, and
is this him as a senator in Chicago already at the beginning of his presidency in 2000? Who knows?
I think that's actually as president-elect in 2008. On the right, and
yes.
he has, I've been seeing a lot of him on the TV recently in the United States, and I'm seeing a lot of gray up there, looking like Santa Claus.
Yes. No, I want to tell you that before I started anchoring this show, I was a redhead.
I don't know about that, but despite the vacations in Hawaii, the golf, which to alleviate presidential stress.
Maybe it's all the world violence and wars. Who knows?
And American domestic politics,
and healthcare,
North Korea,
and Congress,
and Congress. Lots of things there.
Lots of things,
gotta go reach out for the Just for Men, right? Maybe he will be soon. Do we have time for another Turkish story?
Yes, we do.
Have you heard of bonsai?
No.
Yes, it's a synthetic cannabinoid, and it's some kind of an illicit drug. And I'm thinking Midnight Express, right? Well, apparently the use of this substance has just skyrocketed 17% in
Turkey?
No, more than that in the past 3 years. Actually, 648 people died from either, smoking it or inhaling it. I don't know what they do with it, but they shouldn't be doing it.
They shouldn't be doing it?
And they're doing it a lot in Istanbul.
You know what? I'm just theorizing out loud here, and because this is a segment we can do that, maybe this is the reason behind the mass support of the Turkish people in Erdogan.
I would say that it definitely merits further study.
It does.
Yes, the impact of that drug could be.
And what is it? It's like a form of cannabis.
Yeah, well, I guess maybe it's related to pot on some level.
Bonsai's a great name.
Yeah, it's bonsai.
It's bonsai.
You find it in the Egyptian spice market in Istanbul. Maybe I didn't say that.
You did not say that.
No, find it somewhere, but don't use it. Anyway, economy, Japan.
Yes.
Japan's approved a $29 billion spending package to boost their economy, which has been sagging of late.
Huh.
And that's a lot of money, big chunk of change. And coming at a time when there's talk of Chinese economic issues.
Superiority?
Superiority, and also some growth issues as well. So that rivalry between Japan and China is always kind of going on in the background. So maybe China will be looking at this with some concern.
With some concern. No, which is good because we don't have enough rivalries between two
there really aren't enough.
Not
so
enough
just add this one to the mix.
This kind of brings it all together.
Yeah.
Tony Grant, you are locked in studio with me and you're never leaving. Thank you for this part of the show.
See you in a bit.
Yep. On to our next topic. Israel is well versed in elections and unfortunately also well acquainted with corruption scandals. This election, however, is the first time that we get to see both play out at the same time. Last week, reports emerged of a series of arrests and investigation which allegedly involves a large system of bribes to politicians in the Israel Beitenu party, the party led by current Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman. Among the key suspects are Deputy Interior Minister Faina Kirschenbaum and former Tourism Minister Stas Mishenikov. Prosecutors suspect cash was transferred to non-government organizations and various other groups in exchange for opportunistic appointments, with some of the money circulating back to public officials in the form of cash payouts and benefits. The timing of the probe, 3 months before elections, Ardu has raised accusations that investigations are politically motivated and are trying to harm the hawkish party's performance in the polls. Joining me in studio is the one and only Walla News diplomatic correspondent Amir Tibon. Amir, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thank you for being with us this morning. Let's take a look at what Foreign Minister and Israel Beitenu party leader Avigdor Lieberman had to say about the affair yesterday.
We are dealing with a well-planned and well-timed move. The investigation was perfectly timed to coincide with the election season. From what we can see in the media, we are to expect an additional wave of arrests, more incarcerations, more leaks, systematic leaks to which the accused cannot respond. It definitely raises many questions and points to think about. This will accompany us all the way to the polls. Every day there will be more arrests and more leaks for the months to come.
Now, Amir Tibon with us from diplomatic correspondent for Walla. Tony and I aren't as well versed in Israeli politics and all the shenanigans that can happen in this time. But when Avigdor Lieberman, current foreign minister, and I bring this to your attention, I mean, Israeli papers are splattered with this mess. Is it, that really, is it suspect that this is coming out 3 months before elections?
Well, the police are saying that they've been working on this for a long time. This is an investigation that has been going on for a year now. They have somebody deep inside the organization, inside Lieberman's party, that has been providing information for a lot of time. And you see that some of the, I will say, alleged wrongdoing that they're dealing with have happened a long time ago, 2 years ago.
Right.
So it doesn't seem like this is really something that was specially manufactured for the election. But of course, Lieberman's talking point cannot be completely disavowed. He's saying, look, every time before you reach the elections, a few months before, suddenly somebody starts to talk about Israel Beitenu's corruption scandals. In the last election 2 years ago, as the Israelis were going to the polls, the Justice Ministry was discussing what should they do with Lieberman's corruption cases. Should they, go forward with the prosecution or not? He's saying basically we haven't seen an election season in which Israel Beitenu has not been really, like he said, sputtered out in the newspapers as some part of a corruption scandal. Who is right and who is wrong in this? It's hard to tell.
And when it comes to the numbers, as we discussed outside of the studio approximately a month ago when the elections were announced, it was fairly clear that Israel Beitenu was going to be somewhat of a game changer at the end of the election because it projected, it had a number that was high. Speaking of that, let's take a look at the poll that has come out. The latest poll, for example, from Israeli Public Radio. If I'm looking at the polls around IDF Radio poll, December 26, shows prospective Israel Beitenu voters asked if they may reconsider voting for the party in light of recent allegation. 60% say yes. Looking at numbers, Likud this morning, 23 Labor Party, 23 Jewish Home, 17 Israel Beitenu at 8. Is this affecting the game changer?
Look, it's hard to tell, and of course in Israeli politics, reading the polls is something that is a lot of times more commentary than factual reading, because each person has their own analysis.
Right.
I will say this, I think that Lieberman, his party was originally a small party that was winning support, especially from older Russian voters.
Right.
You know, there is a 1 million strong Russian community in Israel. The younger Russian population doesn't vote for Lieberman. It is more incorporated in Israeli society and votes for other parties, but older Russian voters stick with him. And that population has given him, over the years, something like 4 or 5 seats in the Knesset. Lieberman's real strengths came from other sectors of society. He managed to attract many more, I would say, ordinary Israeli voters, not necessarily immigrants from Russia. And that electorate could pretty much abandon him right now because people are sick of this kind of corruption that has been sticking to him all the time. They gave him a chance once and twice and 3 times, and he made a big move in the last few months of trying to shift to the center of Israeli politics. He was considered a right-winger for many years. He suddenly started talking about the two-state solution, the Saudi peace initiative, Israel's relations with the Arab world, trying to attract more ordinary voters.
Even going out, you know, when you look at statements, and I'm wondering what was behind that. I think it was a week ago or something like that, where he said that it's very nice to ask the United States to veto a UN resolution of the Palestinians, but it's very hard to do so after going head-to-head. I mean, he was criticizing also the Netanyahu's administration.
No, actually, in the last round of Israeli-Palestinian negotiations, Lieberman was Secretary Kerry's best friend. He was defending the American administration against attacks from other right-wingers. He was making a big move to the center. And right now, I think many centrist Israeli voters could abandon him. Now, that doesn't mean that he will lose his core
constituency
of more older traditional Russian voters. He could still get his 5 or 6 seats from that electorate, but I think he will have a hard time going to other voters.
I want to touch with you again on the poll that we're looking at and the numbers that we're looking at, because you said something very interesting a second ago. If we're looking at the poll that puts, Likud and Labour Party, moving a little bit on to the actual preview to the elections, both of them at 23, Jewish Home at 17. At the end of the day, if you look at these numbers, if we're looking at the polls this morning, I mean, is it really at the point where everything is up in the air, the way the media in Israel is trying to portray it? Because going into these elections a month ago, it seemed like a fait accompli that Netanyahu is calling for unnecessary elections. He's going to be prime minister again, et cetera, et cetera. This week, it's looking different, isn't it?
Well, I think every week in this election span, we're going to see some kind of a different game. That's what's fun about elections. And of course, we in the media create some kind of hype around it, and we try to make some kind of excitement. And while many Israelis were not really interested in these elections, as you said a month ago, now things look different. I think that the real question is, will Labour have the ability to form an alternative coalition? Exactly. The fact that Labour and Likud are tied in the polls, and actually there are some polls in which Labour is even leading Likud, is getting more votes, doesn't really mean they can form a government. The question is, will they have enough other parties that will rally around them? And that could include some interesting bedfellows. Lieberman, who was considered a right-winger for many years, maybe would align himself with the left, actually, after moving to the center. The ultra-Orthodox and Lapid, the finance minister.
Like the last, what we call, the white prince or the white knight on the horse of the last election.
Yeah,
right?
So Mr. Lapid, after really rallying against the ultra-Orthodox in the former elections, actually said last week, I don't mind sitting with them in the same coalition because I already passed my legislation on getting ultra-Orthodox to serve in the military. So I don't care to be in the same government with them. So there could be some really interesting connections. And the big question is, I think, is not who is going to get more votes, Mr. Netanyahu or the opposition leader, Mr. Herzog, but who will make more wise and surprising and maybe even shocking political moves to form a coalition.
No, and really, really, really quickly, when we look at the members playing, playing these political seats right now, what do diplomatic correspondents, if you were a betting man, and I'm asking you to do something that we feel, if you were a betting man, how do you see this coming out? Is Netanyahu a survivor that can withstand these elections as well? They're calling it the Bibi elections.
Well, I try to stay away from putting my explicit bets on anything, but I think Netanyahu has proved over the years that he has a tendency to survive. Mr. Herzog, however, in the connection with Ms. Livni, showed that he is actually a good deal maker and he can get interesting things to happen. Both of them will play out their cards, and we'll be here in the studio to analyze it.
Hopefully you'll come back to visit us again. Always a pleasure to have you with us, Emil Tibon. When we get back, sex, drugs, milk, and meat. Yes, I said that in one sentence, but all of them in Yiddish. Stay with us. It's going to be interesting. First, though, let's hear some more of the morning headlines. is still, actually, my prompter says it's Wednesday, December 23rd, but that feels wrong, right?
So wrong.
So wrong.
Yeah.
It is so
He
wrong.
thinks it's the 29th.
It's the 29th of December. It's almost gone for 2014, one of the worst years ever. This is still the morning edition on I-24 News, the place you should be. Last I checked, I'm Yael Avi still. Thank you for staying with us. Get ready for some Yiddish funny Yiddish jokes. Listen, the only phrase I know in Yiddish, this has me, is Scheinheit wo hast du genachtet, which is what my father used to say to me when I was 16 and I came home really late. Scheinheit wo hast du genachtet means, where the heck were you all night? But, you know what? If, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the Yiddish language, it's probably funny no matter what you hear. And comedy can also go much deeper, though, other than just Yiddish. Actually foster positive change and understanding. And to break all of this down, we are so pleased to have here in studio Jamie Ellman and Ellie Battalion.
Yes.
Yes.
Nailed it.
You nailed it. The co-creators of Yid Life Crisis.
You're way funnier than us, by the way, so this is going to be an awkward
Really?
mess.
We'll get tough.
I'm way funnier than you. High five me, Tony. Thank you.
Yeah.
And
I want to give you a high five for staying out all night when you were 16 years old.
Yeah.
Now tell us where you were.
That's what we did just now.
no, very good, right? Very good. Wasn't it good on my
Israel
part?
and the Galut wants to know.
Wants
where
to
you
know,
were.
the diaspora Jews
Yeah.
want to know, how did you swing being out all night? But listen, dyslexia is a horrible disease. I'm losing my lines. You're here, you're in Israel, you're doing something that I find incredibly important, and that's Comedy for Change. What is it? Tell me what it is.
This is a conference that was put together by Omri Marcus and a team of great people out of Jerusalem, actually. It was last weekend, where he brought together comedians, writers from all over the world for a 2-day conference to see how comedy can affect social change. For some absurd reason, we were invited.
Yeah.
Okay. Why?
We really don't know.
Yeah.
Probably because they wanted some sort of representation of the...
Canada?
Well, everyone wants a little Canadian peacekeeping here and there, but I think there was actually, even though it was in Jerusalem, there wasn't as much of a Jewish focus. So because we were doing Yiddish-related stuff,
Right.
they wanted a bit of a Jewish comedy angle. So we were exported for that reason.
Tony concurs. We do have a clip, I believe, of this. It's should I call it a comedy convention or a get-together or a panel or
Shindig.
pathetically naive? A shindig.
Shindig.
Good.
Shindig in
Shindig.
Yiddish,
Let's take a look of what happened in Jerusalem. Comedy for Change. Lofty. I actually tend to support the idea. Let's take a look what that meant last week.
Das lass ich nicht glauben, du kannst essen nicht.
Lass ich nicht glauben, was du esst nicht.
Scheut, Mann, es ist verkackt in Yom Kippur. Ich bin gekommen von schon, die letzten 30 Minuten.
Leser. Hast du ja doch nein gesagt, nach und sag es nicht okay, Gott in den Himmel zu sagen, dass du wirst etwas essen, Yom Kippur.
Ich hab erst gesagt, dass wir können nicht wissen, oder Gott existiert. Zweitens, es ist nicht von Gott, dass ich hab Meuch, es ist die Älteren.
You guys must have a huge audience.
The whole Yiddish world is clamoring for this material.
Stop. First of all, I led wrongly into this because this was not from Jerusalem for Comedy for Change, rather one of your bits.
Which we showed at the festival.
What you showed at the festival.
So,
So it all
sure.
connects. It all connects. What's behind, Yiddish stand-up comedy or comedy? You woke up one morning, you were like, yes, this will sell.
Well, first of all, what I was hoping for is that I'd get to be interviewed on live TV, broadcast around the world with the Jaffa Port behind us.
Did
Nailed it.
Yeah.
So you're done. Go on. Anyways, no, I'm listening. This is great. Can you stay still? I'm
Yes,
getting a
please.
thank you very much. Good, Ellie. This is a great freaking picture. Fakakte. Oh, this is good. This live, really?
It is. It's
This
live.
is absurd. This does
It
not
is.
seem live right now. I gotta tell you.
And I gotta tell
Can I
you,
pinch you?
but
'Cause
don't
you're
lean
not
on
Jimmy.
anything.
Okay,
Please.
yeah, please. Yeah. Is
Very
this real?
breakable studio.
It's
Is this
all
on?
Be careful.
Okay. Anyhow, what?
So your life
Why-
mission
why
has been
Yiddish?
accomplished. Why Yiddish?
Why Yiddish? We had an intuition that Yiddish was funny. We weren't setting out to make billions of dollars with Yiddish, although that would be really impressive. And maybe that should be our goal for
Talk about
2015.
that after the thing. Yeah.
The
Yeah.
$5 billion Yiddish fund.
Let's get on
Making millions out of Yiddish is right up there with peace in the Middle East, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
Challenging.
Challenging
Yeah.
word. Yes.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, we were also thinking, well, there's a few reasons why it was Yiddish, but in terms of how it relates to Comedy for Change and why we're here, we were using Yiddish to, for one thing, pay tribute to Jewish comedy, which we believe stems from Catskills and even Shalom Aleichem
And Jewish holidays and tradition, I think, no? I mean, when you read about so much death and destruction.
Yeah, it's a defense mechanism.
Bingo.
It's our own defense forces, if you will.
That's true.
We bring the Gaullist defense forces in the form of comedy.
It's the CDF.
Yeah.
The CDF.
The CDF, okay.
And we're being attacked frequently, including now, possibly. I don't know. Is somebody manning this port? Anyway.
You're holding it.
Yeah, it's okay, cool.
So tell me a little bit about Comedy for Change in Jerusalem. You came, the audience, you spoke Yiddish?
Yeah, we
Yiddish.
Ish. A little bit is our point.
Do you really speak Yiddish, by the way?
I think you speak more Yiddish than
I
me.
probably do, don't I, right?
Give us a little bit.
A bissele.
A bissele.
A bissele. Yeah.
Verstehen a bissel.
A bissel.
We actually did learn Yiddish. We went to one of the few high schools in the world that actually teaches Yiddish. It was a long time ago, though, so we had forgotten a lot of it. But in the process, we wrote our stuff in English, and then we translated into Yiddish, and then learned our lines and performed it in Yiddish. So we're not fluent Yiddish speakers, but we're Yiddish.
Target audience being who?
Well, we've been told that the whole thing is very niche. And we say, oh, we made a Yiddish web series. And they say, well, for the 4 people that speak it, all of whom are Hasidic and who will hate the show and will never watch it anyway. But it's not true because, first of all, as you can probably see from what's going on the screens here, we did subtitle it in English, and there's many, many more English speakers than Yiddish speakers.
We actually subtitled it in French as well.
Really?
Because we're from Montreal, where there's a French-Canadian community, and part of what we wanted to do was branch out, show them Yiddish, actually show them different versions of Jews, that you could have secular Jews and not just Hasidic Jews.
I'm laughing just at the idea, the notion that this was shown to French people. How did this come down with the French?
Well, first of all, we mean French Canadians.
French Canadian, huge difference.
When we say that, although we definitely want to make the French Jews in France laugh a little bit. We think they could use a giggle, use a chuckle right about now. I would say. And many of them are actually moving to Montreal. But you know, who's the audience? We're telling a story here through a Jewish lens, which is really about a wider array of topics which are universal. For example, religion, fundamentalism, extremism, atheism, and multiculturalism. We're from the city of Montreal, which is extremely multicultural and multilinguistic, and food, which is a major thing in our show, brings communities together.
In Judaism
and in Judaism, of course. So we were using sort of all of these elements to talk about multiculturalism and the beauty in keeping the babies and throwing out the bathwater, if you will, or the seawater, depending on where you are. Because I think that's the Mediterranean. Is this not freaking you out? Look at the freaking oceans behind her. This is pretty cool. This is really good. Anyways, this is real. Mom, if you're watching, this is the actual sea is behind us right now.
No. And first of all, guys, I think this is amazing stuff. You have, 12 hours left in Israel?
About that.
About those. Okay.
Go swimming.
We could do that. We're going to head to this shuk, actually, I think, after this in, not in the Veit, what's it called? Kerem Ateimanim. Yeah, we want to go eat.
You want to go eat. What we do in Judaism. I mean, I love that you're here with us, and you're locked in studio as we move on to our next segment, which, feel free to chip in, because Tony's a little bit jet lag. I'm hungover. And it is Monday morning.
We wouldn't understand that. We don't know what day it is.
What day it is.
Anyways,
there you go.
Okay, we'll help you out.
Yeah,
it's
Tony
December
Grant.
23rd, obviously.
It's the day before Christmas.
Yes.
It's the day.
Wow.
Maybe not.
Ambient jet lag, right?
Tony Grant with the Spiral Viral is the web review.
Well, it's still the Christmas season, around the world.
True.
And of course, it all started in Jerusalem, really, in Israel.
And
way
Jesus
back when,
was a
Jesus.
Jew.
Yeah. But these days, people are dressing up with Christmas lights and prancing around IKEA to at least one person trying to imitate.
You go away for 2 weeks and you come back with IKEA?
Yeah, I know, because I know you and I both love IKEA. And apparently this one guy took it a little bit too far, but it's a hit on YouTube. Do we have a clip of this chandelier?
Oh, Lord. Let's take a look.
Yes.
What about this festive candle? No. We have this Christmas tree? No. Well, what about that holiday chandelier? Holiday chandelier?
Party girls, don't get hurt, can't feel anything. When will I learn? I push it down, push it down. I'm the one for a good time call, phone's blowing up. Bring on my doorbell.
You guys
Why?
Because we can't be letting you guys see that in here.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, drink. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, drink.
Okay,
Yeah.
listen, I'm all for making fun of IKEA because I do think IKEA is, has been created by Lucifer. But that, but that's.
Yeah, so
It's in the Tanakh.
It is, isn't it?
Maol Zvuv.
Christmas is the time for
No, sorry, Baal Zvuv. It's in the Tanakh. Yeah, one of the major.
for the non-Yiddish speakers out there, and
Yeah.
I think it's like a Christmas catharsis.
And this is Christmas.
Yes, yes, you wrap
Would you
yourself
agree
in
with me, though,
Christmas.
that the chandelier mocking videos, I have to say, it's gotten to the point, up to this day, I know everybody loved that video. I don't get it.
Well, the thing is, I think now that towards the end of the year, we're seeing a lot of whatever we've seen a lot of. We're gonna see even more of it the next couple of
Oh,
days,
yeah.
such
Oh, yeah.
as the internet memes mocking chandelier,
Mocking
that sort of
chandelier,
thing. But
yeah,
I
to
think
this
if they can
point.
give it to IKEA too,
Please.
why not?
Yes.
Yes, Madonna, of course, always in the news. She had some singles that were apparently leaked, and this was part of her Rebel Heart album. And she actually ended up by putting them on iTunes, and they were
Rather
selling.
than attacking North Korea.
Right, rather than attacking North Korea, but apparently they started to fizzle. Yes, apparently collapsing, and the only one left on iTunes is called "Bitch, I'm Madonna." Yeah.
Really?
No, I think that apparently, I think it's kind of symbolic. Like she's had it.
She actually has a song called "Bitch, I'm Madonna."
Yeah. And
I
you can
love
buy it
that
on
woman.
iTunes along with
Yeah.
the interview, by the way. Not that. As we're talking about
Yeah.
But it begs the question, she's 56, and is it ageism in America, or is she just past her artistic prime? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's trying. Well, who knows? I can see her. I can already see her. About it in 2 years from now, sitting Joan Baez like on a in a stool somewhere with a guitar.
Going acoustic,
Yeah, going acoustic. Yeah.
Holiday.
Yes.
Speaking of perhaps arguably more relevant artist, Miley Cyrus has gone topless on Instagram in her hashtag Free the Nipple campaign. Now, this is to support the freedom of women around the world.
Yes. Just ensued.
Yes.
It's just that, I don't know if the audience, we can see the photo that's up on the
Yeah,
screen.
the audience can see
those have
that.
been tastefully blurred out so that there's no problem internationally.
Ellie, stop drooling on the mic.
Now we know
It's
that
very tasteful.
very tasteful.
Tasty.
As
The
she
mic.
is.
Cool.
Now, why do I mention Miley? Because when you're at 30,000 feet, as I was yesterday,
Look
you've
at me,
got
I'm touching
nothing to
myself.
do.
Yeah.
You just listen to the Bangers album over and over again.
Over and over and over
I
again.
think she's a great artist, with or without the nipplage.
Really?
So, yeah, I think she's really
You
got
have
a
just come out and said that she is a great artist.
I think that she has got a lot of chutzpah.
Moxie.
Moxie.
But chutzpah would be
Nipples.
more
Yeah,
nipple.
at least two nipples.
And these
We
are
just
nipples,
realized.
yeah. Can somebody explain to me? I know I'm sitting with only men in the studio, but what the heck is the Free the Nipple campaign?
Oh,
It
well.
sounds Yiddish. Feed the nipple.
The nipple, yeah.
She is supporting the great fourth wave feminist cause of being able to go topless just like men in the environment of her choosing.
Yes, Ellie is actually the Montreal chapter vice president
Oh,
yes,
okay.
of the Free the Nipple campaign. And by
the
the way, hashtag Free the Nipple Ellie Battalion Midlife Crisis. He's going to be doing that exact same pose on the beach here in Jaffa as we leave here
we're
afterwards.
all looking forward to that.
We're all looking forward to
Yes,
that,
yes,
completely.
yes,
It's
yeah.
going to be right
So-
down there. Okay.
Right over
Moving
there.
from Free the Nipple, I will not free mine. Move on.
Idris Elba. Idris Elba.
Idris Elba. Okay.
Yes. James Bond.
James Bond.
Okay, so we know that Spectre is going to have Daniel Craig in it, but of course there's all these shouts and murmurs, and I guess some internet leaks related to Sony again saying that Idris Elba was rumored to have been considered for the role of
James
007.
Bond.
Yeah, and he's kind
Finally.
of. It would be really pretty cool, and he's saying basically that isn't 007 supposed to be handsome? He's like kind of having some fun with it.
Yeah.
But I thought actually would be a great candidate would be who? New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. I mean, if we're talking about good looks, right? So I think for post-Spectre, I think,
Spectre,
Idris can
Chris
wait.
Christie.
He'll still be handsome, 10 years out, whatever. But
I like my
maybe for New
donut.
Jersey.
Yeah, how do you like your donuts?
Lots of them.
Glazed, not frosted.
And several at once.
Wow. I love this. Can we do this every day?
Yes, we can. Stay.
Stay, please do
We'd
stay.
like to.
Stay. And moving
goodness
along.
gracious. The Hobbit is
Of
doing very
course.
well at the box office. I love that picture of that thing. What is
What
it?
is that?
It's Peter Jackson's The Hobbit. It's the Battle of the Five Armies, the #1 title globally. $573
How long is
million.
this? Really?
Yeah, for looking at that.
And the
I don't
movie's
know.
what, 6 hours long?
Probably, 5.5 hours too long at that. But anyway, it seems to be
There's
popular
Smaug,
amongst
by
the
way,
masses.
which is a Yiddish name. Smaug.
Smug. Everything
yeah.
is Yiddish,
Yeah.
obviously.
really is.
Smug, smug.
Plug.
Feed the nipple and schmug.
Schmaug.
You should use Free the Nipple. That should be your campaign.
Friede Nippel was my first girlfriend.
Exactly. Yes, moving on. Quickly.
New Year's Eve.
Yes.
It's coming up.
It's coming up.
Yes, and the most expensive place to spend it apparently is New Orleans.
Why?
I don't know why. Do you know?
A lot of freed nipples in New Orleans.
That's true.
30 seconds worth all the time we have.
There
You
you
have
go.
to stay with us, though. When we get back, something completely different in feminist news now that we've freed nipples. But of course, first, let's hear some more of the morning headlines. I-24 News, December 29th. It's just a few more days left to 2014, and it's the place to be. And to join us, you know why? Because Karen Kirsch is here. Seriously.
Thank you.
Look at her beaming. Karen Kirsch for anything, and not only that, and then we also have Chen Lieberman.
Yeah, I was like,
yeah, I was like, okay, what about me? So it's 3 women in the studio. Don't get to see that much, that much. And that's
that
what
actually talk.
That actually talk.
Yeah.
That actually speak. And Karen Kirsch is here to manifest the fact that we don't see it enough in our feminist corner. Anything and everything you need to know in women's news. So Karen, what do you have for us?
Well, I'm actually going to speak about the upcoming Israeli elections.
Thank you.
And a new group, a very interesting new group that we tried to they asked us to help find them a slogan.
They did?
Yes, they did. Because in Hebrew they're called lo nivcharot, lo bocharot, which literally means not elected, not voted.
Not voting. Yeah.
But it doesn't have the.
Did you come up with something?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
Not yet.
You need to think about it. Yeah.
They're a group of Haredic women.
Orthodox
ultra, very ultra, from different groups, different sectors in the group.
Right.
And they have decided that they are doing a campaign to have a Knesset member who's a female Haredic woman.
Okay.
Because they haven't had one. And they have quite a few voices.
Quite a few voices?
Yes.
Can we have something when we have something to take a look at, I'm assuming?
I'm not sure, actually.
Okay. What are their voices?
Well, what we do have to look at is, of course, they're getting loud voices against them, and they're being blamed of being like terrorists, and feminist is apparently a really, really heavy curse when you speak about the Orthodox.
The thing that's interesting to me, and I'm wondering, and I know where this is heading, but have they already been ostracized within their own community?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
Automatically, they have been. And so it's a very interesting group, and they've started it in the previous elections.
Right.
It didn't catch on that much. They had a representative running in the Jerusalem municipal elections. She was actually pushed aside and pressured very, very heavily to step down, which she did. And I've heard them speaking.
Right.
Unfortunately, somebody's already making a documentary about them, so they're not giving interviews anymore.
Right.
So
yeah.
I hope they're going to achieve more than the documentary. They are pushing very, very strongly to be represented, and they had a very strong chance with Adina Bar Shalom, the daughter of Ovadia Yosef.
Yeah.
And she's a very, very prominent figure and accepted, and she's been doing a lot of things to promote women in the community, in education, in building them a special university, in providing them jobs. And she, unfortunately, has decided that she's joining Shas and staying in
ultra-Orthodox party running, staying
within the party and helping in a women's advisory board, but not running.
Right.
And she actually had a real chance. The only Haredic representation that was ever is in Meretz.
Right. That's the
left party.
The left party, the ultra-left party, one can say.
Yeah.
Now,
So they are being very, very criticized, and what they did this weekend, it's not exactly them. That's the interesting thing. It's like an organization of religious women, but not ultra Haredic. They posted pashkavils, which is like poster boards. and they called it the poster of the daughters of the protocols of the daughters of Zion.
Yeah, a playoff on the protocols.
I think
of the
that we
elders
can
of
actually
Zion.
see.
Okay.
And what they're saying in the Pashkevil is that all the accusations that they're blaming them, that they're stepping out of their jobs, they're terrorists. Our daughters will no longer be modest, and really sort of very aggressive stuff. And the Haredic media picked up on it as actual criticism.
Really?
It took them a little while to realize that it's not criticism, that it's actually them or the support of them.
The support of them that they did.
Using that campaign. That we have the people hanging that at night in Mea Shearim in Jerusalem, and also in Bnei Brak, and it's the Daughters of Zion. It's very interesting. And another thing that they're doing, which I think might be more effective, they're approaching all the Israeli media and saying, when you are interviewing our Haredic Knesset members and the ones who are running, ask them, why aren't you
integrating women?
How would you have an answer for them? Because we're ultra Orthodox. I mean, that's the thing. It's like trying to drive on the left side when you're in England. It's I don't understand it. I mean, they're living in the society. It's part of the principles that the society is based on. And I'm not saying it is a good thing. I'm not trying to justify
what they're saying
it's part of that world.
It is a valid point, but what they're saying is it's a valid point and it's not a valid point, because the Knesset is not a religious institution. It's not. They're not asking to join the Rabbanut. It's not wrong for women to talk. It's not wrong for women to work and support their husbands. That's what they do. So it doesn't fall in any category. They're not women who say we're not running within the community. We want to run in the ultra-Orthodox parties because we believe in that system, and we're not doing anything against it.
That's true, but within that system, maybe not written, in dogma and code of, so to speak, religious law. Chen raises a very interesting point, that it is a woman in the patriarchal, ultra-Orthodox community of any religion, by the way. Her position is in the back. So it's going against the tradition.
It is going against the tradition, and that's kind of
trying to modernize.
That's kind of what Adina Bar Shalom is saying. I want to change, but I want to change from within.
Right.
I want women to study more. I want women. She's actually an example of a woman who went on and studied religion, and she was supported by her husband and by her father. And actually, we don't know what was. Maybe Ovadia Yosef, who was very sort of progressive in these kind of issues, would have eventually been convinced that it's okay to have,
a woman
actually in the Knesset, because it doesn't go against, and that's the interesting thing that they're saying, it doesn't go against anything that's allowed or that's forbidden within the actual law. And they're saying it's very interesting things that I didn't know. One of the women there is Esti Shushan. She's a reporter, and she said that for quite a while she was writing under a men's alias, and she didn't know that she was sharing the page with another columnist who was also
writing under male alias.
Well, once you agree to cover yourself, to cover your body, for example, so you automatically agree to not have the same rights.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Because, I think these women do support other traditions in this community.
Yes.
Once you support one tradition, you kind of follow all the others, the ones that maybe are not as great for you. But it's a slippery slope.
It is a slippery slope, I think, but it's also, a slippery climb. And in a way, I don't think we can criticize them like we can actually, as outsiders, criticize Adina Bar Shalom's choice to not use
run.
The ability that she specifically had to run.
Yeah, no, I'm not criticizing. I'm actually saying maybe they need a more radical action.
Maybe that's my transition. Smooth. There, I feel like Tony Grant. Speaking of Chen Lieberman, and maybe they do need Chen Lieberman, because we've got you though now. Yes, and everything and anything you need to know in pop and pop culture news. What do we have, please?
So, have you heard about the movie The Interview?
No, what is that?
Of course I watch it. It's so silly. It's so funny
Not
that
only
this.
this, somebody I know who watched it said if there were at least 2 jokes in it that were funny.
I mean, there
maybe.
were. It was funny throughout, but it's the kind of humor that it's a hit and run humor. You don't really remember it.
It's college humor also.
It's college humor,
fraternity humor.
exactly, and it makes fun more. It makes fun of the Americans, not really North Korea. But I want to summarize this scandalous month that Hollywood has been through.
Yes.
Because I can see a positive point here, and I'll show you how. So we'll start with Sony and the North Korea scandal. We know all about that. They made 15 million in online downloads and also 3
Best
million
PR campaign
in theater.
Ever.
No,
Ever.
because they were supposed to do like 20 million at least if they opened regularly on a Christmas
And
day.
would they? If the movie's really bad?
Of course they would, because I mean, even with the small PR that they had, but nonetheless.
Still.
So we have Sony, and then we also have Exodus, the movie about the Exodus, Moses.
That the Egyptians are boycotting.
Exactly. So this is banned in Egypt, Morocco, and also the United Emirates. And also we have Unbroken by Angelina Jolie, a movie about a war veteran, a World War II veteran, and that movie
That's
portrays.
banned where?
In Japan, but it's exactly it's being criticized in Japan because they're portraying the Japanese as cruel.
Right.
We're talking about World War II, so they might be accurate. But the thing is,
can you imagine what would happen to Hollywood if Germany started banning movies because Nazis have been, the villains for years?
So that's the thing.
Yeah.
They were villains for years, the Nazis, till Germany has become a really important market for international audiences.
So we need new villains.
Exactly. Everybody's talking about freedom of speech, democracy when it comes to Sony, but
at the end of the day, we just need new villains.
Well, I think we should use Martians because we can't criticize anyone else by now because there's always a threat.
Or people should just develop a sense of humor.
Or I mean, yeah, that's an option. But also, maybe Hollywood filmmakers should try and develop their stereotypes. And so that's the positive
Make them
point.
more complex, is it possible?
Exactly. I mean, that's a positive point that I'm
Slightly
talking
more
about.
women?
Because Hollywood is more and more dependent on international audiences.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
why they don't use Chinese villains anymore or Russian villains because those are important markets. So Hollywood can censor itself when it comes to financial interest. Everybody's talking about freedom of speech, and that's why I'm saying they picked on North Korea for the last few years because they don't market their movies in North Korea, right? They don't have any financial
movie
risk.
theaters are banned there, yeah.
Exactly. So
wow.
it's easy to make fun of Kim Jong-un, but they're not making fun of people that they have interest with.
But I'm trying to think, when there are, look at this thing like Exodus. Okay, personally, I think that it's odd to see, Egypt in those days, and there's not one black person, which is ridiculous.
But you
only a few slaves. There are a few extras.
No, what did Rupert Murdoch? A few extras. What did
All the Egyptians I know are white.
Well, no, exactly.
Yeah.
Rupert Murdoch, it's a brilliant line. All the Egyptians I know are white. But at the end of the day, there is this thing called, artistic liberty, and it's movies. It's just movies.
Right, but I think the artistic liberty, and I'm talking about the big blockbusters, is not really free from other interests.
Right.
It's not free from financial interest.
That's
So, I mean, the
the first
reason
one.
Ridley
The first one.
Scott didn't pick a black actor to play Moses is not because it's his artistic freedom. It's because he needs a big name to bring more people to see the
and for it
movie.
to sell
He
overseas.
invested not he, but it was
his name on it.
and it's $140 million were spent on this film.
Yeah.
So they had to bring a big name, and that's why, they could take Denzel Washington.
Exactly.
Right?
No, I'm looking at the CG, the terrific, insane CG of it, but, to me, there's a whole, show we can do about the reliving of the biblical stories in Hollywood as of late, which is also bizarre. But yes,
right.
moving on.
Okay, so let's talk about Saved by the Bell star Screech. Remember Screech, the geek?
Yes.
Yeah. So Dustin Diamond, the actor, he was arrested for carrying a weapon. He was sitting in a bar, and it started out two people tried to take a picture of him and his wife, and then he threatened them with his weapon, so he was arrested. Freed on bail, but the thing is, it's not the first time this guy is getting into these embarrassing events. He was in all these really low reality shows, but he also had a memoir saying that while doing the show Saved by the Bell, the hit show, he slept with thousands of women. Then he later said it's exaggerated. But the thing is, these guys who were on the Saved by the Bell show, that was not an easy way to grow up. And I do want to point out our focus also at Mr. Belding. Remember Mr. Belding, the principal? Try to follow. No, this is still Screech, but try to follow Mr. Belding on Instagram. The guy keeps taking pictures with strippers and like young girls and Playboy bunnies. I mean, something really went wrong in this high school.
Something was really wrong. And when they tell me, it was really hard growing up on that show, this is my reaction. That's the world's smallest violin. I mean, seriously. So you were a child star and made a lot of money.
Right.
Well,
I mean,
boo-hoo.
Look at what's this guy called? The guy who's hosting extras. Slater.
Yeah. Slater. Yeah.
Mario Lopez. He did well.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, but
he has
Screech,
dimples.
my God, I'm going to
dimples.
leave that bit of information of Screech saying that he slept with many women
while doing that show.
That show.
He was a kid.
Yeah.
I mean.
Okay,
so Josh Taylor-Lynn, this guy, he's a prankster. He has a YouTube channel with lots of pranks. Now, he wanted to give a homeless guy $100 and see what he does with it, because we all know that if you give them a lot of money, they'll probably buy drugs with it, right?
Yeah. Right.
Let's see what happens.
Really quickly, what happens?
That much, but hey, anything's appreciated. Oh, goodness.
It's just $100 here.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, just keep it. It's your money now.
Oh, that's...
Just want,
No, really, are you sure?
Yeah, go ahead, it's yours. Yeah, just keep filming. He just came out.
So essentially, he buys all this food.
We think he's buying alcohol, right? That's how it looks. But now he's going to give it to all these other people.
There is still goodness in the world as we end 2014.
And I think that a lot of people actually got to the good part.
Yeah. Because it's like, okay, here's a homeless man with a big bag of liquor. But no, he's giving homeless people food. And we should all be that kind. Yes, my line.
But live in a house.
No, in that respect. But that was it for us, folks. I-24 News Morning Edition on December 29th. Do check us out, Facebook, Twitter, all those social networks. And of course, don't forget to tune in tomorrow morning to one of the last days of 2014 as we promise you a better year on Wednesday. That was it. Stay with us.